Lucy was home alone on a stormy night, studying for her college exams. The rain pounded against the windows and thunder echoed through the empty house. She kept glancing at her phone, hoping her parents would text that they were on their way home. The sound of the storm outside made the house feel even more isolated, and every shadow seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways. Around midnight, her dog started growling at the living room window. Lucy tried to calm him, but he wouldn't stop staring at the glass, his fur bristling. Curious and slightly unnerved, she peeked outside but saw nothing except darkness. She shut the blinds, telling herself it was just her imagination playing tricks on her, and went back to her room. Later, as she got ready for bed, she checked her phone. A notification caught her eye, a motion alert from her security camera. The video showed a figure standing at the window, not outside but inside the house, looking out. Lucy's heart dropped. Panicked, she ran to her bedroom and locked the door, her fingers trembling as she dialed 911. She whispered to the operator, barely able to speak as she heard faint footsteps in the hallway, slow and deliberate. The door handle rattled. She pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. When the police arrived, they had to break down the front door, which was locked from the inside. They found no intruder, but there were wet footprints leading from the living room to Lucy's bedroom door. The police never found out how anyone got in or out. Jake was used to living alone, but that night he felt uneasy. The apartment felt colder than usual, and every creak of the old floorboards made him jump. While watching TV, he heard a faint scratching sound coming from the walls. He tried to ignore it, thinking it was just mice, but the sound grew louder, more insistent. It moved from room to room, following him like it had intent. When he pressed his ear to the wall, he swore he heard whispering. The scratching turned to knocking, steady rhythmic knocks that seemed to echo his racing heartbeat. He backed away from the wall, but the knocking followed, growing faster. Desperate, he called the police, his voice shaking as he tried to explain what was happening. When they arrived, they searched the apartment and found the crawlspace hatch open. Inside, they discovered deep scratch marks on the wooden beams, as if someone had been trying to claw their way out. They also found remnants of old clothing and a small rusted locket, with a photo inside of a family that Jake didn't recognize. The officers told Jake that the previous tenant had disappeared without a trace, and no one had ever figured out how. Like and subscribe now. Are you brave enough to join the hunt? Megan moved into an old house she inherited from her grandmother. The house had character, creaky floors, antique furniture, and a long, dimly lit hallway with doors on either side. But one door at the end of the hall was always locked. Her grandmother had never mentioned it, and no key seemed to fit. One night, Megan woke to the sound of faint tapping. It echoed through the hallway, coming from the locked door. She brushed it off as pipes settling, but the tapping persisted night after night, always at 3:15 a.m. Curiosity got the better of her, and she tried again to open the door. To her surprise, it creaked open effortlessly. Inside was a small, dusty room with an antique rocking chair, rocking on its own. The air smelled like mildew and something metallic. As she stepped inside, her phone flashlight illuminated childlike drawings on the walls, depictions of a dark figure standing at the foot of a bed. The next night, Megan woke to the creak of the rocking chair echoing down the hall. The drawings on the walls had changed. Now they showed a figure standing at the foot of her own bed. Daniel was house-sitting for his aunt in a rural area. The house was old, isolated, and surrounded by woods. The first few nights were quiet, but by the third night he started hearing faint whispers coming from the closet in the guest room where he slept. Thinking it was his imagination, he ignored it until the whispers grew louder. He pressed his ear against the door and heard distinct words. "Let me out." The voice was faint, almost childlike, but layered with something deeper, more guttural. He opened the closet, but it was empty. Yet the whispers continued. Unable to sleep, Daniel stacked a chair against the door. But in the dead of night, he woke to the sound of the chair scraping across the floor. The closet door stood wide open, and on the inside, claw marks had appeared, fresh and deep, as if something had been trying to break through. Emily spent a quiet weekend home alone, binge-watching her favorite shows. Around midnight, the TV screen flickered and the picture distorted. She assumed it was just a signal glitch, but then she noticed something unsettling. A face in the static. It was faint, but undeniably human. Eyes black as voids, mouth twisted into a grimace. Emily turned off the TV, but the screen stayed on, the face growing clearer. It began to move, lips forming words she couldn't hear. Panicked, she unplugged the TV, plunging the room into darkness. But the face remained, glowing faintly in the reflection of the screen. The next day, Emily threw the TV away, but every screen she passed, her phone, her laptop, flickered with static and the face appeared, watching her. Like and subscribe now. Are you brave enough to join the hunt? Mia lived alone in a small apartment complex. One evening, she ordered food and dozed off while waiting. She woke up to a notification on her phone. Motion detected at your front door. She assumed it was the delivery driver, but when she checked the camera, it wasn't. The screen showed a man in a cracked, expressionless white mask, standing completely still in front of her door. He wasn't holding food. He wasn't knocking. He was just there. Her heartbeat raced. Was it a prank? A mistake? She waited, hoping he would leave. But after 2 minutes, he hadn't moved. Then, without warning, he tilted his head sharply to the side, as if he had just noticed the camera. Slowly, he raised a hand and waved at her. Mia backed away from the door, heart pounding. She checked the locks, secure. The police would take too long to arrive, so she texted her neighbor, Adam, asking if he could check. Seconds later, the doorbell rang. Another notification popped up. Motion detected. She checked again. The masked man was gone. Instead, Adam stood there, confused. When she opened the door, Adam shook his head. "There was no one here," he said. She replayed the footage for him. They watched as the masked figure stood, waved, and then, just before Adam arrived, crouched down and crawled out of the camera's view. That night, Mia barricaded her door. But as she lay in bed trying to sleep, a soft scratching sound came from outside her window. It was on the second floor. Jake had recently moved into a quiet suburban neighborhood. Wanting to feel secure, he installed a doorbell camera that sent real-time notifications to his phone. Most nights it was just the occasional delivery or a passing cat, but one night something different appeared. At 3:12 a.m., his phone buzzed. Motion detected at your front door. Half asleep, he opened the app and saw a figure standing motionless on his porch. The person didn't knock, ring the bell, or move, just stood there, barely visible in the dim glow of the porch light. Jake stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The figure was tall, unnaturally thin, and seemed to be wearing dark clothing. He switched to live audio and whispered, "Hello?" No response. Then the figure tilted its head slowly, like it had heard him. It stepped back into the darkness, disappearing beyond the camera's range. Disturbed, Jake rewound the footage to take a closer look, but when he did, his blood ran cold. The figure had no discernible face, just a pale, featureless surface where eyes and a mouth should have been. For the next several nights, the motion alerts continued, always at 3:12 a.m. But whenever he checked, the figure would just stand there motionless before vanishing into the night. The police found no footprints, no evidence of anyone ever being there. One morning, exhausted, Jake decided to stay awake until 3:12 a.m. and watch his porch in real time. When the notification came, he braced himself, but this time the screen was black. The camera had stopped working. Then from just outside his window, he heard a tap. Like and subscribe now. Are you brave enough to join the hunt?